All right. Hello, everyone. I'm here today with my friend Sylvan Tristan, author of Redating Ancient Greece. And today, this is not about ancient Greece, but I recommend that you check out our first video that we did where we go over the basis of his book. And the second video that we made where Sylvan shared 9/11 predictive programming. Pretty good, pretty interesting. And this episode today, we're talking about COVID-19 predictive programming. And that's going to pick up largely right off of the 9/11 predictive programming. There's a lot of overlap there. So, Sylvan, thank you very much for joining us, sharing this presentation with us. I know you're very excited about it, and we can jump right into it.
All right, so it's called COVID-19 Predictive Programming in Hollywood, or Subliminal Messages in Movies, Part 2. So spoiler alert, again, I'm sorry, I'll have to spoil a few movies. So let's jump in. So as you said, it's a sequel to my former presentation called 9/11 Predictive Programming in Hollywood, or as you called it, 9/11 Coincidences in Films. So the general outline today, first we'll have a quick intro to the code. Then we'll talk about Tom Corona Hanks. Then I'll give you a few examples of coded movies. Then we'll talk about 2001: A Space Odyssey, George Floyd connection. And finally, we'll try to see what it all means. So again, I want to thank 88 Finis Temporis, the YouTuber, who's been doing so much research into this topic. I'm just the modest follower of his tremendous work. So coronavirus, or COVID-19. So it's obviously about a supposed virus, which is called corona because of its corona of spikes. So when you think corona, you think of the beer, Corona beer, or also of the eclipse, because during an eclipse, you've got this corona of light. You also think of such things as a crown, because corona means crown, right? So these are a few of the most obvious symbols that will be used, or that have been used by Hollywood for decades to code coronavirus, as we'll see. Okay, so the Twin Towers, yes, last time we talked about the Twin Towers. So the Twin Towers are like a giant 11, right? Two Twin Towers, and they lasted for 33 years. Now, both 11 and 33 are twin numbers, 1 and 3. And indeed, the Twin Towers were destroyed on 9/11, so it's another 11. Now, 33 is 3 times 11. So as we'll see, 3 and 11 are going to be used to code COVID-19. Now, this is a tribute in light. We spoke about it last time. It started on 3/11/2002, 88 spotlights in place of the destroyed Twin Towers. 88 obviously is a twin number, another twin number. Now, what's important here is that they started to flash these spotlights on 3/11/2002. Now, this is One World Trade, okay, the tower which replaced the Twin Towers. Now, funnily enough, it opened on 11/3, which is a coded 3/11, 11/3/2014. Now, a funny thing, it's like it looks like a big syringe. Even the logo here, can you see the logo? It looks like the needle of a syringe. I believe it's not a coincidence. I believe, it's their dark sense of humor. They're, playing with us, I think. Now, of course, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic on 3/11/2020. So 2020 is a twin year, 2020. And the first day of the pandemic, according to the WHO, is 3/11/2020. Another important number, which I mentioned last time, is 19. Well, 9/11, 911 is a coded 19. Now, 19 years after 9/11, here comes COVID-19. 19 is like what I call the number of war, the number of evil in their, sick mind, I think. Number means death, destruction. Now, the Twin Towers, or TT, okay, Twin Towers, TT. Well, T is the 20th letter of the alphabet, so TT also indirectly codes 2020 in many films, as we'll see. Now, the Twin Towers were destroyed on 9/11 2001 by 19 alleged hijackers, right? Now, 2020 is the twin year of COVID-19. So, twin 19. Well, it all reminds me of the 19th arcana of the Tarot of Marseille. On it, you can see the twins of the Gemini sign, right? So, 19th arcana and the Gemini, the twins. So, in some, strange way, I think both events are using this 19th arcana with the twins, twin towers on one side, twin year on the other, 19 hijackers on one side, COVID-19 on the other. It's all part of the code. Now, this is 2017. We are 3 years before the pandemic. And look at this article. They're trying to make us believe that 3 years before the so-called pandemic, face masks are fashionable. I think they're preparing the minds. Unless, of course, it's a coincidence, but it's like they're preparing us for the face masks 3 years before. This is from 2019, so it's just a year before COVID-19. So this is from Project Runway, the American fashion reality TV show. They welcome Nora, COVID Kapoor's model. And they say, "Hi, COVID, would you mind putting your mask back on?" And the man even says, as soon as she walked out, I thought, oh, she's sick, but like sick in a good way. It's sick. So sick, COVID, and face mask. Just a year before, less than a year before. Very strange. Now, how ironic is that? Well, look at this tweet by Hannah Fry, a BBC journalist. She writes, this is during the pandemic. In a strange twist of fate, it seems the first coronavirus patient to be infected in the UK is from Haslemere, the very place we used for our 2018 citizen science experiment called the BBC pandemic. What were the odds? Okay, the same place they used for a fake pandemic turns out to be patient zero of the corona crisis. Very strange. Now, oddly enough, almost the same thing happened in France. Now, look, this is February 2020. Now, out of like almost 35,000 municipalities in France, the coronavirus chooses that of contamine Montjoie, all right, to appear. Now, contamine means contaminate. Now, what were the odds, okay, for the first French cluster to occur in contamine, which means contaminate? This is sick. Now, we all know 911. We spoke about it last time. Number 911 for emergencies in the US was created in 1968, which is year one of the World Trade Center. It began to be built in 1968. So 911 was created in 1968 as well. Now, 311 is for non-emergencies. It was created in 1996. Now, why 911 and 311 or 311? 9/11, first big event, 3/11, the pandemic. Just a coincidence? So yes, as I said, 1968 is the year one. Now, it's not only the World Trade Center, which began to be built in 1968. In May of 1968, a film came out called What's So Bad About Feeling Good? A comedy in which a virus created in a laboratory and which makes people happy arrives in New York. Now, patient zero happens to be located very close to where the future Twin Towers, or TT 2020, will stand. And guess what? They wear face masks. Now, in July of 1968 came the so-called Hong Kong flu pandemic. Is it real? Is it a way to say it's year one? Well, look at that. In November 1968, the term coronavirus is used for the first time in the journal Nature. So 1968, is really year one. This is from The Truman Show, okay? So The Truman Show came out in 1998. Now, look at the code here. You've got an ad, okay, and twins, okay, behind Truman. And the ad says Kaiser Chicken or KC. Look at the logo with the crown, all right? KC. K is the 11th letter of the alphabet, okay? C is the third. So KC actually is a code for 11-3. And the twins are the Taylors brothers, T&T or 2020. Well, the crown is here, and the crown means corona, right? Or sorry, corona is the Latin word for crown. So this Kaiser chicken happens to be wearing a crown, which is a corona, or a code for coronavirus. This is Tom Corona Hanks. Yes, here comes Tom Corona Hanks. So Tom Hanks, has been linked to the Twin Towers throughout his career. Here are a few examples of, the Twin Towers coming, appearing in his films. Or here you've got the twins separated, blah, blah, blah. Here in Forrest Gump in the center, you twins. Yeah, they don't look like twins at all, but he's been linked to the Twin Towers or to the notion of twins. And here in the film Big, 9 minutes, 11 seconds into the film, and the date is 9/11, Josh discovers the fortune teller machine called Zoltar, who can act on the future and then makes a wish to become big. So Tom Hanks is both linked to the Twin Towers and 9/11 and coronavirus or 3/11. This is an article from 2015. Look at the date, 11/3. So it's a coded 3/11. Here, Tom Hanks is linked to the Queen of England in a very funny way. They say bust of British Queen looks like Tom Hanks. So what they're doing here is that they're linking the crown or the corona to Tom Hanks. Now, this is another article from 2020, exactly 4 weeks before March 11. And again, they're linking Tom Hanks to the Queen of England or the crown. Now look at the title, Mashtini, the Queen discussed handsome David Beckham over martinis with Tom Hanks, the actor reveals. Now this, coronavirus started in March. Now March comes from Mars, the god of war. Now they're talking about martinis. Well, martini comes from the name Martin. Now Martin comes from Mars, also the god of war. Now David means literally the beloved. Beckham means the house. So David Beckham literally means the beloved house. Are they secretly or funnily alluding to lockdown? Okay, 4 weeks later, many countries are going to experience lockdown. England did, France did. I think they're just playing with us. Now, this is a selection of, a small selection of films where Tom Hanks in his films keeps being sick. Walter Fielding is dangerous to your health. Don't touch him. I have AIDS from, Philadelphia. Forrest, I'm sick. Do you have a cough just due to cold? Yeah, it's like he's always got a cold. Here, I'm not sick except for this terminal disease. I think this is from Catch Me If You Can. He's coughing. I have a little cold myself. This is from Inferno, and now I'm showing signs of a disease. I have this cold and I want to get home and I want to go to bed. And this one, sometimes when someone is sick, they have to visit the hospital. Well, he's always sick. He's always got a cold. Even at the Golden Globes, okay, this is not from a film, this is from the real life Golden Globe Awards. January 5th, 2020, just 2 months before the pandemic. In his speech, he says, ladies and gentlemen, I'm such a, it's the cold that is making this happen. Yeah, he's got a cold. Okay, this is a selection of 3/11 or 11/3 in his movies. Okay, Catch Me If You Can, Larry Crown, Splash, Big. Okay, look, his birthday is November 3rd, 11/3, coded 3/11. And when you've got AM, A is the first letter of the alphabet. M is the 13th. So 1/13 or 11/3. Okay. So whenever you have this time, 11:30 a.m. or 11:03 a.m., it's actually 11:03, 11:03. So 11:03 twice. Let's go back to the Golden Globe. Now, the Golden Globe Awards, at some point in his speech, he says sometimes it's 3 o'clock in the morning and sometimes it's 11, or it's 11. He stutters there at night. So obviously he's reading a script, right? He's been told to say 3:11, just 2 months before the pandemic. Very, very funny. He also mentions Shakespeare. Okay, we'll come back to that in a few minutes, but keep in mind that he's mentioning Shakespeare. He says, I was an intern at the Great Lake Shakespeare Festival. We'll come back to that in a few minutes, and we'll explain Shakespeare in a way. Here, end of his speech, he says, knowing the text, and it's not just your lines, is the whole thing. It's the red dot. Now, the red dot he's talking about is the dot inside the camera. Now, what is a red dot? Well, whenever you get vaccinated, you got a red dot appearing on your skin. So the red dot is not innocent, just 2 months before the pandemic. This is from the poster of Cast Away. Can you see here, Cast Away at the Edge of the World, CAA, or here CAA on the poster with Wilson. And Wilson, if you know the film, it looks like he's got on his head a corona of hair. He made it with his hand full of blood, of course. Blood. And CAA is 311, 311. Now, this is from Larry Crowne. This is, okay, things are getting really serious now. Larry Crowne came out in 2011, so 9 years before the pandemic, or the so-called pandemic. It's by and with Tom Hanks. Now, Larry means laurel or crown, and crown obviously means crown. So what Larry Crowne means is crown, crown, or twin crown. You can see the crown on his scooter here, or the crown on his mug. So crown, crown. Let's study this film. This is the very beginning of the film. Okay, so at the very beginning of the film, you see color red, which is the color of the sun. Red here, red in the U-Mart. And here he's wearing red. It's his first appearance on the screen. Now, his first appearance happens to be 3 minutes and 11 seconds into the film. Okay, directed by Tom Hanks. And what you see is Tom Hanks wearing red. Is the sun. They make things very clear, okay? Just a minute later, he still wears red and is showing his crown. And someone calls him crown. He's the crown. And he's about to become the corona because he's going to be eclipsed, as we'll see. Now, he's getting fired. Sorry, I'm spoiling the film here, but I have to. So when he gets fired, now he keeps wearing black or gray. So what I think is now he symbolizes the moon, which eclipses the sun. So he's not red anymore. He's now gray. He's now the shadow eclipsing the sun. Now his neighbor wears red because his neighbor won the lottery jackpot. So he's the winner. He's the new sun in a way. Now he's the loser because he got fired. He's now wearing gray. All right. So he now symbolizes the moon eclipsing the sun. There are also an emphasis on crowns, right? Crown on the mailbox, crown here on an ad, crown on the donut print sign, crown on this note, crown or corona is now the corona. And even his new friend Talia calls him not Larry Crowne. She calls him Lance Corona. Now, a lance or a spear, I believe, is symbolizing the syringe for this COVID-19 jab. And corona, obviously, is the coronavirus, okay? You couldn't make things clearer than that. His nickname is now Lance Corona. Here, Larry Crowne, or Crowne, he's arrested by the police with his scooter with a crown on it. And look at the back, 311. Here, it's not 311, but 321, which I believe is a coded 311 because 311 is 3 and 2, 1. Now, this is confirmed a second later when Larry Crowne eclipses the 3, 2, 1 on the door. Here, Talia gives Larry a new watch. Now, guess what? She gives him the new watch at 1 hour, 13 minutes into the movie. So there is a clear emphasis on the watch here. And look at the watch. She shows her tattoo, which happens to be Chinese, okay, like the so-called virus, coronavirus. Now look at the hands of the clock, 3 and 11. Here, still in the same film, you see his name, Larry Crown, which means crown, crown. Next line, Stephen DiBiase. Now, Stephen also means crown, and DiBiase means stuttering. Now, if you stutter, you repeat the words, right? So it's Stephen DiBiase means crown, crown, in a way. So it's full of crowns everywhere.
How does Stephen mean crown? Where does that come from?
Okay, I think it comes from the Greek. Stephen in Greek means crown. Okay, so that's the thing. As I said, Larry comes from laurel, which means either laurel or a wreath or a crown. Now, Stephen literally means crown in Greek. This is the map genie from the film. Okay, 11:03 a.m. or 11:03 twice. And at the end of the film, Larry, which is the moon, wears white. He kisses Mercedes, his teacher, his son. So two become one. So I believe this symbolizes the eclipse, right? The eclipse revealing what? The corona of light. Two become one. So let me explain here. Okay, the sun and the moon are two identical disks, and when they become one, here comes the eclipse. So, and of course, just 1 month or two before the pandemic, you've got this event in New York called Event 201, which was a preparation for the pandemic. So, to recap, just like 9/11 transformed two twin towers into one, unifying tower, One World Trade, the eclipse was chosen to symbolize the 2020 lockdown starting on 3/11, caused by the so-called coronavirus, because the eclipse is born from the union of two twin disks in size, and the two disks become one. And in total darkness, only the solar corona remains visible around the invisible moon. Okay, 2 towers, 0 towers, 1 tower, two become one. Even 201, just before the pandemic, the global pandemic exercise, all right, in October 2019, just before, 201. This is from another film. This is from a film called A Hologram for the King, which came out 4 years before the so-called pandemic. Here is with his daughter, Kitty Clay. Now, KC, Kitty Clay, KC 11:3. She's wearing red. Obviously, she's the sun. He's wearing gray. He's the moon. What do you see at the back? A Corona beer bottle. And same film, Corona in the middle, coming soon on either side. I believe these are subliminal messages, all right, to prepare us for the future so-called pandemic. Coming soon, the Corona in the middle. Same film, Hologram for the King. He is saved by a jab, of course, right? Syringe, jab, which saves his life. Same film. You work for the CIA or something? Well, he says just a little freelance work, nothing full-time. Ha ha ha, freelance or free spear, free syringe. Now, the only minute during which we get to see the king, okay, in this film, looking at the holograms, okay, so remember the name of the film is A Hologram for the King. Now, the only minute when we see the king looking at the holograms is 1 hour, 13 minutes into the film. Wow, what a coincidence. End of the film, the last scene, the moon and the sun get together. Yeah, two are going to become one, or the eclipse. Well, his girlfriend is Zara. Now, Zara in Arabic means shiny and bright. She clearly represents the sun. And as I said before, he represents the moon. Now, you can see on the side the door with the moon and the sun. Now, funnily enough, at the beginning of the film, 3 minutes and 11 seconds into the movie, Okay, the man said, his boss said, I need you shiny and bright here, Alan. You're in charge of a deal that's pivotal for the company, which makes it even more pivotal for you. Okay, shiny and bright. Remember, Zara means shiny and bright, the sun. And the last shot of the film is the door with the zooming in on the moon and the sun. They're going to make love. They are lovers now. Two become one, a symbol of the eclipse, the coronavirus eclipse, 4 years later. This is from the film Inferno, okay, which also came out in 2016. Inferno in Italian means hell. The film is about reducing the human population. Now look at the poster. Inferno looks like a syringe. This is from the film Inferno. Something was injected into my bloodstream and now I'm showing signs of an illness. Well, they're playing with us. Everyone we've come into contact with has it and will likely die. Not reassuring. Inferno isn't a fiction, he says. It's a prophecy. Indeed, it's a prophecy 4 years before. Let's jump to 2019, okay? September 2019, just a few months before the so-called pandemic. This film is called A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood with Tom Hanks, of course. Now, Tom Hanks here plays Fred Rogers. Now, remember that Fred Rogers always wore red. He's the sun. Very strange coincidence. His show lasted from 1968 to 2001, the exact same dates as the World Trade Center from the day of construction to its collapse, right? 33 years, exact same dates. Now, Fred Rogers, Fred is Frederick. Now, Frederick means peaceful king. Rogers means famous with the spear or the lance. So you've got the king, the crown, and the lance or the spear, which is the syringe, all in one. And guess what? Who plays Fred Rogers? Tom Corona Hanks, of course. Who else? 3 minutes, 11 seconds into the film. King Friday the 13th. It's crown and blah, blah, blah. Crown, king, Tom Hanks, wearing red. 3 minutes, 11 seconds. You can't make that up, right? You couldn't. It's so crazy. And here, the Twin Towers, same film, okay? With the moon, all right? So the moon, which is going to eclipse the sun, obviously, right? You've got the sun wearing red and the Twin Towers, TT 2020, and the moon. And here, a very beautiful example, same film, of an eclipse. Okay, it's difficult to see here, but this is a tiger, all right? The puppet of a tiger, which is eclipsing Lady Abeline, okay? It's a perfect eclipse. And what you can see around is only her hair, red hair, the corona of hair. Next shot, you can see Lady Abeline from a different perspective, and here the tiger, and a symbolic corona here. And now Lloyd eclipses the eclipse. Okay, let me come back. Okay, tiger here, corona of red hair. Next shot, the man, Lloyd, eclipses the eclipse. Same film, special friends from the neighborhood of make-believe. Yes, it's all make-believe. Same film, I am King Friday the 13th, says Tom Hanks. Who else? And in perhaps the eerie scene of the movie, in a Chinese restaurant, Mr. Rogers asked Lloyd to take a minute of silence. Guess what? This minute is 1 hour, 13 minutes into the film. A minute of silence. And look at his face during this minute of silence. Well, what actually happens is that the whole restaurant becomes silent. It's a lockdown-like silence. And Tom Hanks gives us one of his most enigmatic looks. Remember, this takes place in September of 2019, just a few months before the so-called pandemic. Wow. Now, 3/11/2020, as I said before, the World Health Organization declares the pandemic. So 3/11, 2020. Now, guess what? Tom Hanks is the first American celebrity to test positive for the coronavirus. Yes, this is reported on March 11th, 2020. Tom Corona Hanks and his wife Rita Wilson test positive for coronavirus. March 11th. Wow. Now look at that. This is getting funnier and funnier. A young boy in Australia called Corona de Vries, an 8-year-old Australian boy, writes a letter to Tom Hanks as he and his wife are quarantined in Australia. Dear Mr. Hanks, he writes, my name is Corona. I heard on the news that you and your wife had caught the coronavirus, the boy wrote. Are you okay? He adds that he loves his name, but he's being called coronavirus at school, poor boy. I get very sad and angry when people call me this, he writes. Okay. Now, guess what? Tom Hanks happens to have taken a Corona brand typewriter with him on the Australian Gold Coast. As you know, many people know, Tom Hanks collects typewriters, but it's not any typewriter he's got with him. It's a Corona typewriter he's got. At the same time, he's being quarantined for coronavirus in Australia. So Tom Hanks writes back to the boy. He writes, you are the only person I've ever known to have the name Corona, like the ring around the sun, a crown. Things couldn't get clearer. Okay, the solar corona of the eclipse is being mentioned by Tom Corona Hanks himself. Then Tom Hanks sends his Corona typewriter to Corona de Vries, who in turn replies to Hanks with his newly acquired Corona typewriter. Of course. Now, a few weeks later, Tom Hanks' blood is being used to develop coronavirus vaccine. Yeah, who else? He volunteered. Now, I call 2020 the year of the eclipse because the coronavirus, with its crown of spikes, is reminiscent of the solar corona of an eclipse, but also because during lockdown, life stopped for 2 months in many countries. So normal life was, in a way, eclipsed. And of course, the face masks eclipsed the face as well. So it's really the year of the eclipse. Now, a few examples from films. This goes back to 1973. This movie is called Sisters, okay, by Brian De Palma. Okay, crowns, eclipses, twin towers, twin sisters, and germs, of course. Okay, the whole collection of codes as early as 1973. This is The Man in the Iron Mask, 1998, with Leonardo DiCaprio. Again, masks, crowns, Jesuit symbol, which looks like a corona, an eclipse, look. Twin brothers, of course, right? So everything. And the eclipse of the face. This is from a movie called Crank, which came out in 2006. Now, in this film, a man is poisoned by, quote, a Chinese shit drug, and must keep his adrenaline flowing constantly to keep himself alive. So here you see a beautiful eclipse, Christ-like position. This is the so-called Chinese shit, which is the drug, Chinese man. Here the hero is wearing a DNA-like shirt. And best thing is when the Chinese man says, just wait until the 2020 hindsight. 2020. This is from Kingsman, The Golden Circle, which came out in 2017, 3 years before the pandemic. Okay, so golden circles, golden rings everywhere, eclipses from the very beginning, crowns, one eye, because one is eclipsed. So this man symbolizes the eclipse or the moon, and this lady here, red-haired lady, obviously symbolizes the sun, as always. It's a film about an engineered virus created in a lab, of course. Emergency, look. Save lives. Tom Cruise, yes. It's not only about Tom Hanks. There is another Tom, Remember that Tom means twin, right? We saw that last time. So Tom Cruise also has a clear association with masks in his films. Here's a selection of films with Tom Cruise where he wears a mask, and here he's wearing a mask in 2020, of course. And here, just before 2020, these two shots show a film which was supposed to come out just before the pandemic and which came out after the pandemic, where he can't breathe. He can't breathe. It's not only cinema. This is an example from the music industry. Okay, some people who are old enough remember Corona, the Rhythm of the Night, which came out in 1993. Okay, on the album you see the Twin Towers. In the clip you see the Twin Towers, and you see this carousel which looks like coronavirus, and you've got the fortune teller and the number 20 and the crown. Everything. Corona. This is more recent. Future. The man is called Future and his song is Mask Off. Mask on, mask off. Remember, fuck it, mask off. So look at what they said in the press in 2017. The look of the future. Of course, they're wearing masks. And here they're wearing masks in the clip 3 years before the face mask of the so-called pandemic. How funny. This is a film called Donnie Darko from 2001. Okay, this one also calls Donald Trump. This can be the subject for another show, but Donald Trump is also a very interesting topic. Now, this film is 113 minutes long. Okay, so 113, 11-3. It was released on 119. 2001, 19 years before the COVID-19, right? And it's about time travel, it's about eclipses, it's about Stephen King, Stephen Hawking. So remember, King, Corona, Stephen means king. So it's Stephen King and Stephen Hawking here. And it's full of eclipses everywhere. 88 minutes, okay, 88 again, twin number. Begins with Seattle. Look, the Seattle Times. Now, it's funny because in America, the patient zero happened to be located very close to Seattle. So here you've got Lady Diana with her crown in the Seattle Times. Crowns here, twin sisters here, Asian twin sisters, by the way. Al Pacino, very dark, dark-haired, wearing black, obviously is the moon. This man here, the convict, wearing orange, is the sun. This woman also here, this red-haired woman wearing red, is another sun. And in this scene, she's imitating the gesture of a syringe jab. And at the same time, Pacino, the moon, arrives and eclipses the light in the movie theater. You can't make things clearer. It's always about the eclipse and the syringe and the crowns and the twins and, always. This is from American Psycho, which came out in 2000. Okay, mask, 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 mask. Here, the Twin Towers. Next shot, they say, keep your eyes open. And you see the El Dorado, close to Central Park, New York, which are other twin towers, and they're eclipsing the sun. So one shot, you've got the Twin Towers, and they say, keep your eyes open. Next shot, other twin towers eclipsing the sun. And of course, they talk about a virus. Also from American Psycho, here is Donald Trump, not the real one, an actor, but he's supposed to be Donald Trump. And guess what? He's drinking a Corona beer. Now, here in the place they are sitting, so many Corona bottles, and his friend is even drinking a Corona. And so he's drinking a Corona and says, I've got a tanning bed at home. So just like Donald Trump, remember that Donald Trump is using a tanning bed. So you may ask, why Donald Trump? Well, coronavirus began when Trump was president. Now, you may ask, how did they know 20 years before? I don't know, but they must have known. Well, it might be just a coincidence, but it's really, really funny. And so many Corona beers, I'd say it's very suspect. This is Requiem for a Dream, also from 2000, okay, 20 years before 2020. Sarah Goldfarb, which means of a golden color. She's eclipsing the sun and she's, turning her hair into orange. She's really the sun. Now, Marion Silver, she's called Marion Silver, she is the moon. And Harry Goldfarb, who's Sarah Goldfarb's son, he wants to marry the moon. So the sun wants to marry the moon. Now, the funny thing is that they keep watching, or the woman keeps watching TV, a particular channel called TT 2020. Okay, just a few examples of eclipses or coronas. This is 127 hours, which came out in 2010. Here, the man is eclipsing the sun and is wearing a mask. And what you see is a sunflower on his t-shirt. So the sunflower is something which reminds us of an eclipse, right? Because it's black here inside, just like the moon, and the corona of petals, it really looks like a corona. So eclipse, mask, and a symbolic corona. Now, in Super Mario Bros. 1993, the man is having this corona, a blonde corona haircut. And here's another corona. And in Naked, which came out in 1993, the man is eclipsing a corona clock. Now let's talk about Madonna. Sorry, okay, let me come back. So the Queen of Pop, of course, Madonna has been nicknamed the Queen of Pop, the Queen with the crown, right? Now, on May 8th, 2019, so just a year before coronavirus, the documentary Madonna and the Breakfast Club was released. Now, we learned that between 1979 and 1982, Madonna lived in an abandoned synagogue in a neighborhood called Corona in Queens, right? So Corona, Queens. What a funny coincidence. Now, on May 19th, 2019, so again, just a few days later, she sings a song called Future with people wearing masks. Then she blows and everyone collapses on stage as if they were infected with the virus. Now, in the lyrics of her song, she urges people to, quote, open their eyes. Now, even the Statue of Liberty gets broken. What does she mean? Just a year before the pandemic. What does she know? Now, in June 2019, a month later, okay, her album called Madame X is released. Now, the back of the album features guess what? A Corona Smith typewriter. Okay, just like Tom Hanks. Madame X takes on a multitude of identities which she commits to fighting for freedom. So multiple identities, I believe it's a way to say that everyone is going to get coronavirus. Now, 2020, during lockdown, in April 2020, Madonna gets coronavirus. Now, in this very strange video she makes in her bath, she talks about the disease, saying that it is the great equalizer that makes us all equal. Lyrics weirdly reminiscent of what she said a year before about Madame X. Now, in another video, she talks about her quarantine. What is the universe trying to tell us? And she types on her Corona typewriter, of course. What is she trying to tell us? And later in July, okay, look at this press article. Madonna leads Celebrity Vogue for COVID-19 conspiracy theories. Madonna captions a video with claims that a vaccine for COVID-19 has been found and proven and has been available for months, she says. What does she know? She says they would rather let fear control the people and let the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Now, we know that during the so-called pandemic, the rich got really richer and the poor really got poorer. What's she trying to tell us? And then they try to discredit her with this article. Now, a few magic tricks. Yeah, I call them magic tricks. 311 magic tricks. This is from The Majestic, a film which came out in 2001. The man said, "The magic is all around you. The trick is to see it." Now, in the following scene, Harry takes Peter to the cemetery to talk about sacrifice for the nation. Now, look at the date on the grave, March 11. Yes, March 11, 1920. Okay, 100 years to the day before 3/11, 2020. Yeah, magic is all around you. The trick is to see it. Ah ha ha. Hollywood in 2001. Now, two more examples. This is from the movie Predestination, which was released in 2014. The woman wearing a mask says, "I spent 11 years in that fucked up place and had 3 major operations." Okay? Sick, hospital, mask, 11-3. This is from Back to the Future. Okay, many people know this scene. Okay, Back to the Future number 3. Clara says, "When I was 11, I had diphtheria. I was quarantined for 3 months." And quarantine, yes, is 40 days. 40 is 20 plus 20. Yeah, but what's important here? Quarantine, sickness, 311. This is Elysium 2013, okay? So 7 years before the so-called pandemic. Jodie Foster here says, 3/11, I'm authorizing a full containment order. 3/11. This is from Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which came out in 2011. I need a more aggressive virus strain. Guess what? He's releasing the 113 or 11-3. And this is also from Super Mario Bros., which came out in 1993. Okay, see the door back there? 11-3. And the same scene, they're wearing hazmat suits, which of course are used for hazardous materials. Now, another thing which, okay, this is not from a film, this is from real life. It's called the Crown Act. The goal of the Crown Act is to prohibit discrimination based on an individual's texture or style of hair. Okay, creating a respectful and open world for natural hair. Acronym CROWN. So that's why they called it the Crown Act. Okay, so this is something which started in California in 2019. Funny coincidence, right? And then it was finally passed in 2022, okay, in the House of Representatives. Okay, so it became a federal law after the pandemic, but it started in California just before the Crown Act. And look at this film, which is an animated short film. Came out in 2019, so a year before. At the very beginning, you see a crown. It's called Hair Love. So this is the title of the film. And what you see at the back is a calendar. And a few seconds later, Zuri, the hero, suddenly stares at the calendar, which has 11 crosses. So the last one is on March 11th, which happens to fall on a Wednesday. So March 11, 2020 also falls on a Wednesday. Okay, the film came out in 2019, but it doesn't work for 2019. But in 2020, March 11 falls indeed on a Wednesday. So here she's got this corona of hair, 11-3 here, 11-3 there. Zuri's mother has no hair because she's sick, but she has a bright corona. And guess what? Zuri's father's name is Stephen, which means corona, as we saw. And he's here holding flowers or coronas. And the very end of the film, he turns off the lights, symbolizing the total eclipse. This is Eyes Wide Shut by Stanley Kubrick. Came out in 1999, his last film. Now, it's funny because it's about masks and it's about secrecy. And here, okay, look at the poster. No first names. Cruise, Kidman, Kubrick. Now, CK again. 311. In the film, here, look, corona of spikes, shiny spikes. The plague doctor, yes, and the woman who's about to be sacrificed, and a beautiful 311 here. And the prostitute has received news that she's HIV positive. Now, the sex ritual in the film starts at 1 hour 13 minutes again. And they say all of that was staged. It was a kind of charade. It was fake. Yes, fake. 2 hours 19 minutes into the film, or 2 hours 20 minutes. Okay, is it an allusion to 2020? Might be, but in any case, what the man is saying here to Tom Twin Cruise is that it's all fake. Yes, we know that now. This is from Millennium, a series, so it's season 3, episode 10, 1999. Okay, look here, E113. Emma talks about a woman who dies of a mysterious illness and mentions the CDC. Now, Frank talks about a bacterial infection, then about Seattle. Remember, coronavirus started in Seattle, or very close to Seattle in America, where his daughter Jordan was hospitalized with a high fever. This is repeated later. And the millennium symbol is an Ouroboros, which is a corona, which looks like a corona. Even the productions, look, they're called 1013. Now, if you remove the zero, because zeros don't count, what you're left with is 113. And here, the poor girl, the infected girl, is wearing a mask. Everything in this particular episode is here. Corona, more than 20 years before. Okay, this is from the Thomas Crown Affair. Okay, there are 2 films, so it's full of Corona references, as we're going to see. So 1968, year 1, first Thomas Crown Affair. So Thomas Crown means twin crown, because Thomas means twin, and crown obviously means crown. So it's the twin corona, which I believe means the eclipse. And the song of the film, right, the soundtrack is The Windmills of Your Mind. Round like a circle and spiral, like a wheel within a wheel. Okay, you know the song, right? So a wheel within a wheel. Are they secretly referring to the sun and the moon and the eclipse, the corona, running rings around the moon where the sun has never shone? Okay, it's full of coronas, as you can see, an armillary sphere here, and here is eclipsing the light. Now, here in the film, at the end, the sun, Vicky, and the moon, Thomas, kiss. Okay, this is the eclipse. They're eclipsing the light. 2 become 1. Now, even the name, the Thomas Crown Affair, is very funny because look, TTCA. So 2020 3-1. Okay, you might say 1-1 is missing, but if you know that there's not just one affair, but 2 crown affairs, because there is the theft of a painting. The Thomas Crown Affair is about the theft of a painting, but there's also this affair with Vicky. So actually, is the Thomas Crown affair? 2023 11. Here's the crown. So, of course, there was a remake of the film, and the remake was made in 1999, so more than 20 years before coronavirus. Now, the length of the film is 113 minutes. You can't make things up like this. It's so crazy. And it was made by John McTiernan, JMT. So it's 1, 1, 3, 20, or 11, 3, 20. Now, Thomas Crown, okay, we see the name Thomas Crown, and then, okay, first appearance in the film. Next shot, the Twin Towers, TT, diamond ring, eclipse, eclipses everywhere, right? Okay, here, a very, very obvious eclipse. Now, in the Thomas Crown Affair remake, Catherine is red-haired. She is the sun. She's played by Renee Russo. Now, Renee means born again, and Russo means red. Indeed, she's red-haired. Now, she wonders if there's a connection between Heinrich and Crown. That the next shot, we see the Twin Towers and the song The Windmills of Your Mind. Now, there is a connection. They're both Anna's fathers. So they are the Twin Towers. Heinrich is the real father. He's wearing here orange. Again, he's a convict. Now, Crown, he's her legal guardian, second father, wearing black. He is the moon, sun and moon. And Anna, Tyrol, the daughter, means grace. So she's the goddess of fertility, and Tyrol means dry land. So I believe she both symbolizes one world trade, which is the new tower, the fertility in the dry land of ground zero, and the syringe, to save people from COVID-19. Everything is there. Thomas Crown Affair finale in the remake. Now, in the final scene, you see this painting by Magritte called The Son of Man. So, of course, the Son of Man is Jesus, who was born again. And he's got an eclipsed face, eclipsed with an apple. Now, the song playing at the same time is A Wheel Within a Wheel, okay, which is precisely this eclipse. Now, also the bowler hat. The bowler, look from above, looks like a wheel within a wheel or a corona. And in the last seconds of the film, you've got this song, like a wheel within a wheel, and the final twist, the Pissarro painting, it turns out that the Pissarro was eclipsing the Manet. So it's the end of the eclipse, the Manet is revealed, and that's the end of the film. So the Thomas Crown Affair, at its name, easily predicts, in fact, because you've got Crown, is completely, both films, are about coronavirus. It's a code. This is from Breaking Bad, the series, okay? So season 2, episode 7. This is really funny because it's about the blowfish, very famous scene of the blowfish, which has a secret weapon. Now, the blowfish turns out to be something which really looks like a coronavirus. Look at this. At the back, Corona beer bottle. Now, Walter says, but the blowfish has a secret weapon. The blowfish puffs himself up 4, 5 times larger than normal. Why does he do that? So that it makes him intimidating, so that the other scarier fish are scared off, and that you are a blowfish. You see, it's all just an illusion. It's nothing but air. Yes, and it came out on April 19. So yes, it's nothing but air. Corona circus is nothing, or is going to be nothing but air, an illusion. This is from Children of Men, which came out in 2006. Now, again, Children of Men, it's like Son of Men, like Jesus, okay? They're sacrificed to be born again. So this is from the poster. It looks like, in a way, a corona. And this is from, I think it's from a documentary made after the film, or maybe it's the trailer, a clear corona. And here at the very beginning of the film, you see the eclipse. Crowns, eclipse, everything. The hero eclipsing the sun. Here they're eating Chinese food. And here, yes, he's working from home. Okay, remember that many people worldwide started to work from home during the lockdown. Yeah, it's all part of a bigger thing, she says. And Julian Moore, okay, so Julian Moore, J-M, 10, 13. J is the 10th letter in the alphabet, M the 13th. Remove the 0, 11, 3. She's a redhead, and initially she was supposed to play the first woman in the film to become pregnant in 20 years. Yes, because in the film, okay, I think I forgot to tell you, it's about a pandemic. It's a dystopian film about a global pandemic that has made humanity infertile. Now, she's the first woman, or she was supposed to be the first woman to become pregnant. And in the end, ultimately, they took another actor. She's playing in the film, but she plays another role. Okay, so it's full of eclipses and, everything is there.
What's with that siege of Seattle?
Oh, yeah, the first words of the film, they say day 1000 of the siege of Seattle. So again, a reference to the patient zero in America, coronavirus patient zero, will be located very close to Seattle. We'll see more examples of this Seattle connection. This is from a very bad film, actually, called Field of Dreams. I don't know if you're a fan of Field of Dreams, but I think it's a very bad one. So it came out in 1989. And on the poster, you see Ray, the hero of the film, Kevin Costner. Ray, of course, is the sun ray. And you see a beautiful corona of light. And here, this is the Blu-ray, which came out, guess what, in 2019, right? And is eclipsing the sun. And look at here, yes, TT. You see the field of dreams, and the structures here just look like a T and a T, 2020. Next year is 2020. So 19 seconds, 19 minutes into the film, shoeless Joe Jackson, a real person, almost completely in the shadow, is eclipsed here, except for a partial corona of light, is associated with the scandal of the Black Sox, who, under the leadership of Arnold Rothstein, rigged the 1919 Baseball World Series. Now, 1919 is another twin year, just like 2020. Now, it happens to be the year of the so-called Spanish flu epidemic. It's like every 101 years, every twin years, you have a sort of a pandemic. Now, same film, Field of Dreams. Terence, who's a black man, I believe representing either the moon or maybe the earth, eclipses Ray. So he eclipses the sun. And at the same time, they're talking about lies. Now, here is the real character, the real baseball player called Moonlight. So Moonlight eclipses Ray, or eclipses the sun. At the same time, he says, did you get to make a play? So to make a play, it's a reference to sexual intercourse. Two become one, eclipse. It's also about censorship. You know that censorship became very, very common during the so-called pandemic. And here, Annie in the film denounces censorship. Oh, you can't say that they didn't warn us. They did, many times, over and over again in films. And only in Hollywood, because what I'm talking about here doesn't work in French films or Spanish films or Korean films. It's always in Hollywood films. Sometimes British films, but the British films, only the very big ones like the blockbusters. It's always Hollywood somewhere. Whenever you've got Hollywood, you've got this 9/11 and COVID-19 connections decades before.
Why is that? You think the other countries don't have these same agendas, or what?
Well, your guess is just as good as mine, but I think that the people in Hollywood must know, right? There's only, okay, maybe it's just a coincidence. I don't believe it is because it's just, no, I'm showing you just a few examples. There are just so many. So I think they must know. Or maybe we live in a simulation of some kind and, some entities are playing with us. Or maybe some time travelers are coming back from the future. I don't know, and are playing with us. But I think the easiest solution is that the people in Hollywood know, they have known long before. So that's why they're showing us before. And here in Field of Dreams, we get a jackpot. Okay, let me show you why. Okay, before the jackpot, this is 11 minutes, 30 minutes into the film. We see the moon partially eclipsed by the Earth's shadow, right? So it's an eclipse and it's 113. But let me tell you about this jackpot. In this shot, okay, we are 3 minutes, 11 seconds into the film. And what do you see? Kevin Costner and Amy Madigan. So KC and AM. meaning in both cases 113 or 113. And what you see only, you can see only two letters on this picture, AM again. AM means 113, and it's 3 minutes 11 seconds. Crazy. Jackpot. This is a movie about a pandemic outbreak with Dustin Hoffman. Came out in 1995, so a long time ago. One of the characters is called Casey, which sounds like KC 11.3. And here they have this virus called E1101. So it's 2101. Two become one. I believe it's coded 201. So it's an anti-serum actually designed to kill the virus they have had for 30 years. Prove that in Cedar Creek, they illegally manufacture a biological weapon. Okay, so Pfizer filed the patent for the first spike protein vaccine in 1990, which happens to be 30 years before 2020. So in this film, it's also 30 years before, and it's about manufacturing a biological weapon. And here on the screen, 113 and 30. Now, this is 1 hour, 13 seconds into the film, okay? If you don't believe me, just check the films. It's easy, okay? What you see is the man, the reporter, saying, from here we can only guess at the seriousness of the spread of the disease. And look at his microphone. Is it written Zozo or 2020? Same film, Outbreak. Here you see DNA and PCR. Dr. Drew Reynolds, CDC. And of course, Drew Reynolds means something because Drew means druid. Now, in ancient times, in Celtic ancient times, a druid was a person used to prepare remedies, right? Or vaccines in the modern times. Now, look at the virus. The virus arrives on a ship. Now, believe it or not, the name of the ship is Cook Seattle. Again, Seattle. And here you can see the spikes. They are mentioned. Yeah, clearly they mention the spikes. And here, this it's a lamp. It looks like a coronavirus. And Casey, or KC113, who got the virus, wears a coronavirus patterned nightgown. This is a movie called The Craze, based on a true story. The twins called The Craze, who were criminals, okay? Here they say they look like kings, okay? A beautiful 11.3 here. And the teacher says, words are like an illness. They can infect you. Words are a disease without a cure. And the young boy here is wearing a big mask. It's got germs, she says. Okay, crowns everywhere. This is from Minority Report with Tom Cruise. Okay, again, Tom, twin Cruise. 2002, Steven Spielberg, premiered in New York on June 19th. Tom, twin Cruise, is playing Chief John Anderton, CJA 311, if you remove the zero. 1 hour, 13 minutes into the film, Anderton underwent eye transplant surgery. So he's temporarily blind. In other words, his vision is eclipsed. Here he's standing in front of a symbolic corona and a king, a crowned king. Here, Tom and this girl, the position, they just look like Janus, the two-faced god of transitions. And here, he's got this corona of light above the head when he's imprisoned. The film is also coding 9/11 because the number of the case is 1109. Now, the film came out after 9/11, so it's not really relevant. It's just an echo, what I call an echo of 9/11, 1 year later. Now, what's important here is that Minority Report codes the future pandemic. Now, in the film, the precogs predict that John is going to kill a man called Leo Crow. Now, Leo means lion. Now, a lion and its mane is the king of animals. He is the sun. Now, the crow, on the other hand, is the blackbird of misfortune. It's the moon eclipsing the sun. Okay, so Leo crow symbolizes the eclipse, moon and sun getting together, the eclipse. Minority Report, the man is coughing, and he says, you'd think we had found a cure for the common cold by now. Later on in the film, another man sneezes, he's full of snot, it's disgusting, and he says, this damn cold. They are talking about epidemic proportions. They're talking about the future. The future is so much more interesting than the past, don't you think? It's about facial recognition. Oh, yeah, and nano devices. All right. So for those who believe that there is some kind of nanotechnology involved in the vaccines, well, they're mentioning nanotechnology in Minority Report, and they're talking about lockdown, all right? This is a quote from the film. And in another quote, the man says, confinement was a real education, a real eye-opener. Okay, confinement, lockdown, same thing. And here, of course, he's being injected. Danny John's opponent thinks he's wearing a mask. And here, John and Agatha are eclipsed by a balloon. And here is another eclipse with an umbrella. And at the very end of the film, the precogs twins, okay, one of them eclipses the sun, okay? So the twins and the eclipse, final shot of the film. And another thing about this film is that, as I said, it premiered on June 19th, 2002. So that's 19 years to the day before so-called Freedom Day or Juneteenth, which is in America every June 19th. It was recognized a federal holiday in 2021. So during the so-called coronavirus crisis, right? Following the riots due to the death of George Floyd. We'll talk about George Floyd in a few minutes. So during the COVID-19 lockdown, year of 2020. So I believe the date is not just a coincidence, or it's a very funny coincidence. So this is another jackpot, okay? This is about George Floyd. So it's full of 19. I talked about 19 before. So on May 25th, 2020, at 7:57 p.m., also 19:57 hours, George Floyd is accused of stealing cigarettes. 4 minutes later, the police or 911 are called. He says that he's not resisting them as he's currently recovering from COVID-19. He's pinned to the ground by Derek Chauvin and dies of suffocation, of course. Now look at what they said in the press. 14 days of protest, 19 dead. And of course, the people are wearing masks because it's 2020. And Derek Chauvin was born on March 19th, 1976. Now, they say that he's been a police officer for 19 years. Now, following the Black Lives Matter movement, Juneteenth, as I said, or June 19th, commemorating the emancipation of slaves in Texas in 1865, is recognized a federal holiday in the USA in 2021. So many 19. Now, how ironic is that? Here is a picture, Justice for George Floyd. Hashtag, I can't breathe. Now, remember that the symptoms of COVID-19 is cough, shortness of breath, or difficulty breathing. Very, very eerie coincidence. Now, is it a coincidence? Let's talk about 2001, A Space Odyssey, which also quotes 9/11, but now, of course, it came out in 1968 or year one. This is an example. This is a spaceship. Okay, it looks like two wheels, right? Also, I believe, symbolic of the corona. And you've got many shots showing a close-up of an eye. So an eye is another symbolic corona with the dark circle in the middle and the surrounding corona of the iris. Now look at that. This is the famous monolith, which looks like, because it's seen from the bottom, so it looks like a truncated pyramid, okay, very similar to the pyramid you've got on a dollar bill, which is from the Great Seal of the United States. right? So at the top of the Great Seal, you've got this all-seeing eye surrounded by an aura, sort of a corona. And here in the film, you see the rising sun and the moon. So the moon is going to meet the sun right above this monolith, which looks like a truncated pyramid. So, okay, here's the Great Seal of the United States. Okay, so again, the truncated, unfinished pyramid and the all-seeing eye in the top triangle surrounded by a glory. Yeah, it's called a glory, which is a corona. In the film, the man says quite a serious epidemic has broken out at Clavius, something apparently of an unknown origin. And in the middle, you see Dr. Haywood Floyd. Floyd. He knows about it, but he's not at liberty to discuss this. So there is a serious epidemic, and a so-called Dr. Floyd can't speak about it. Haha. Very interestingly, Haywood, Dr. Haywood Floyd, Haywood means an enclosure surrounded by woods, or a hay, in Old English, a hay enclosed with woods, which is, I believe, a code for corona, because it's a circular or something quite circular surrounded by something else, a hedge. So Floyd literally means gray. So I believe he symbolizes the moon. So Haywood Floyd is the moon and the corona again. Now look here, he's giving a speech in the film 2001: A Space Odyssey. He mentions the epidemic again and says it's a mere cover story, insisting on absolute secrecy on the matter. Look at the next shot, okay? This is, again, we have to thank 88 Finis Temporis for this major discovery. The disposition of the tables, it really looks like the monolith and or the truncated pyramid here, right? So both at the bottom and the top, like converging, truncated pyramids converging on Floyd, who is the moon eclipsing the all-seeing eye. The monolith and the upcoming eclipse at the top and at the bottom, Floyd, who's the eclipse, the moon and the eclipse, okay, and also the converging truncated pyramids. All of them are from the film. Now, look at this. This is Pink Floyd. Again, Floyd. Pink Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon. Okay? Dark, moon, and the song Eclipse. Wow. And their name is Pink Floyd. Okay, so on the cover, you got this pyramid truncated by light. So the second song of this major album, world famous album, is Breathe. Remember, during 2020, there is this hashtag I can't breathe because of George Floyd. And here we've got Pink Floyd. So the last song of the album is called Eclipse. And they say the sun is eclipsed by the moon. Very famous song. Wow. How is that possible? Now, what does it mean, Pink Floyd? Well, literally, it means pink grey, because as I said, in Welsh, Floyd means grey. So Pink Floyd is pink grey. So it's a combination of the grey moon and the pink corona of the sun. What a funny coincidence. And okay, this gets absolutely nuts. Right, insane. 2020, this is one of the most famous photos of George Floyd. Okay, type in George Floyd, Google it. Okay, you'll come up with a few pictures. This is one of the most famous ones. So, of course, he's black, right? And his name means gray. So, as I said, it symbolizes the moon. And look at what's behind him. Vivid colors, okay? Sun colors. And a bottle of, guess what? Corona beer. Corona light like the sun. Crazy. He is the eclipse. Okay, so George Floyd symbolizes the 2020 eclipse I referred to earlier. Google George Floyd most famous mural. This is what you'll end up with. This mural, very, very famous. Now look again. George Floyd, again, the two truncated pyramid. The very name of George Floyd is written in a way which is very reminiscent of the film 2001, A Space Odyssey. So just like this monolith or the tables below Dr. Haywood Floyd, George Floyd, he's here, the black man, look, with the black disc which represents the moon, just like him, and behind him, what looks like a flower, like a sunflower of petals, yellow petals, the corona of light. It's all there in the most famous George Floyd mural. This is absolutely insane. In 2020, in the wake of the George Floyd protests, at least 277 statues were toppled across the world, 241 in the US only. In November, there was this monolith which was discovered in Utah. So it was not just one. They say similar monoliths have popped up around the world. As previously reported by the Deseret News, it was found that there had been 244 reports of mysterious monoliths worldwide. Again, they are toppling down statues and replacing them, same year, 2020, with monolith. Okay, this is the monolith in 2001, A Space Odyssey. They're playing with us. It's not a coincidence. Now, I told you I would talk about Shakespeare one more time. So this is December 2020, okay? So the first man to get COVID shot in the UK is named, guess what? William Shakespeare, okay? So when I say it's in the UK, it's actually the first man in the world getting the COVID shot or the COVID jab, right? So his name is William Shakespeare. Now, of course, the other William Shakespeare lived, or is supposed to have lived, 400 years ago, right? Now look here. Shakespeare is wearing a ruff, which looks like a corona of light. Now, he wrote many plays about kings and crowns, right? And he mentioned eclipses many, many times. He had twins, okay? Look it up. He had twins. Now, he was born and he died on the same day. Wow, what a coincidence. So he was born and is supposed to have been born and to have died on April 23rd. So, twin date. Now, he died in 1616. Again, a twin year. And the year of an epidemic, the so-called Massachusetts plague epidemic. Now look at the name. William means desire of protection. Shakespeare obviously means to shake the spear. Remember the woman, the red-haired woman in 88 Minutes, shaking or making the gesture of shaking the spear, the gesture you make just before a COVID shot or, a vaccine in general, right? So this is precisely what the COVID-19 vax is supposed to do, protect you from the disease. So William Shakespeare is like a desire of protection by shaking the spear. So did Shakespeare even exist? We are wondering. Now, the funny thing is, again, that the first man to get COVID shot is William Shakespeare. What the hell is that? So to conclude, what it means. Now, unless, of course, all this is just a series of coincidences, okay, maybe we live in the Matrix. Maybe it's people from the future. Your guess is as good as mine. Now, but what it seems to mean is that both 9/11 and COVID-19 were psyops, planned decades before they happened. The Twin Towers were probably meant to be destroyed even before they were built. Yeah. Now, the Twin Towers were probably destroyed by a directed energy weapon, and the planes were most probably holograms. Now, coronavirus, if true, okay, was manufactured in a lab. Well, my personal belief is that there wasn't even a virus, right? Because if you see, the number of people who die every year actually is almost the same. Now, a few people died, of course. When I say a few hundreds, right? But remember that people who normally go to hospital just couldn't. They didn't get a chance of, being cured. And some people were even, some old people were even killed. So was there a coronavirus, right? But if it was manufactured in a lab. Now, the plan, but I don't think so, again, but okay, I don't know. The planned PSYOPs were meant to occur on the exact dates of 9/11 2001 and 3/11 2020 from the very start. And the murder of George Floyd was also a PSYOP planned decades before it happened. Okay, now, whoever or whatever designed these two major PSYOPs can apparently control the weather. This we saw last time. They wanted people to know, this is very important, they wanted people to know, at least unconsciously, in advance. Otherwise, they wouldn't have bothered to fill what probably amounts to hundreds of movies with this predictive programming. So they must have wanted us to know, at least unconsciously. To them, astonishing as it may sound, sacrificing countless human lives is not an issue, rather something to celebrate. And finally, yeah, there's clearly a wish to create chaos in this world. So if nobody realizes what's going on, let alone fights back, we are doomed, as there might be more major operations to come. Yeah, one day before the second lockdown in England, or a few days before the vax rollout, okay, on Amazon Prime Video, you've got this series called, yes, Truth Seekers, where, it's about an eclipse. And basically, they show us messages, subliminal messages like obey, okay? So my message to you is disobey. And it's about nanobots, right? It's very important. So it's just before the vax rollout, and it's about nanobots, eclipse, and about obeying us, or obeying them, sorry. So my message is disobey. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Sylvan. This is a lot of coincidences here. Do you
Oh, yeah.
have any clues for what might be the next major PSYOP?
Well, as I said before, it's every 19 years, right? Or it seems to be every 19 years. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope there is no next time. But okay, I have no idea, right? We should study more films too. But I've seen some videos on the internet referring to a date which is September 23rd, right? So September 23rd is 9/23, right? If you add 19 years to 2020, you end up with 2039, which is a reversed or 239. So I have no idea what's going to happen, of course. I hope it will not happen. I hope they're not preparing anything, but well, we'll see.
We will see. What are you working on now?
Nothing in particular, but as I said, I also have some interesting stuff concerning Donald Trump. And as I hinted before, he played in films, and also he appears as a character in many films. And he's been famous for more than 40 years now. Actually, I believe at least 44 years. And well, this can be the subject of another show, because there are so many strange things with regard to Donald Trump. So yeah, I'm working on that now, actually.
Oh, well, that would be very cool. We can follow up on that in the future. I know there's a lot of coding with Trump and symbolism, and a lot of people see him as the savior, but I still blame him for much of the pandemic because he's the one that shut down the borders, and that was the main thing that affected my life, living across border life here. And I don't think he's a savior, but there's a lot to say on him. I'm very interested on seeing that presentation too.
I completely agree with you. He's not the savior, definitely not. And he promoted the vaccine at the time, so he's definitely not the savior.
Still is promoting the vaccine as a good thing, save the
Oh
day.
yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
I'm sure most of the audience here doesn't believe that the pandemic was a, natural event or that it was caused by a virus or anything like that. But just in case you're on the fence, I do recommend watching my docu-series compilation called Wag the Dog Theory. That's on wagthedogtheory.com or on Rumble. There's a lot in there about the pandemic, and yeah, just for outright clarification here, I also don't believe that it was a virus at all. I also don't believe that it was manufactured in a lab because there was no virus. I do believe that it was 100% a media psyop, a false flag, and
Yeah,
people who
I
died
agree
did
with you.
die.
Yeah, yeah, it's completely fake. Most probably, it's a psyop. From beginning to end. It's there's no virus. There's no trace. Statistically speaking, there's no trace of over mortality in 2020, 22. Yeah, after the vaccine, yes, but not during the so-called pandemic. And by the way, I just watched the film for the first time, Wild the Dogs, so just a few days ago. And yeah, very interesting too.
And there's four of them now. Fifth one will be coming out soon. Been a little bit busy, but I've got the material ready to make the fifth one. And yeah, people did die. People were murdered on ventilators. Ventilators kill people,
Oh
and
yeah.
they were given deadly drugs before being put on those ventilators. This is how they killed my grandfather during those years. He didn't even
Oh
have
my God.
COVID. He went into the hospital. They put him on. They give you these drugs before putting you on the ventilator. Put him on the ventilator. He died that night. Right.
That's terrible. That's terrible.
Lots and lots of people. That's how they died. They were led into slaughter and murdered on the ventilators, murdered by the drugs that they were given, including remdesivir, including fentanyl, right? These are among the drugs they give you before being put on the ventilator. So, yeah, it was a mass murder campaign. People did die. They also rebranded the flu, like you said. Typically, hundreds of thousands of people die from the flu, and those numbers disappeared during those years. So it was just the flu
Yeah.
rebranded and people being murdered in hospitals. And that was basically it. Big psyop.
Yeah. So the question is, what's next?
Big question. Hopefully, a
Yeah.
lot of people are more aware now, and like you said, will disobey the next mass orders to do anything, or when the next big event does happen, if it's something like 9/11, hopefully we stand up and say, no, we're not going to allow this event to take more of our rights away, give more power to the government, usher in the new world order, basically, because I think that's what all this was about. Right. 9/11 gave the government massive new powers, took lots of rights away from us, changed the way that we function in society. 9/11 was a big turning point, and obviously, so was 2020. So this just brings us closer and closer to the New World Order with each one of these psyops. And hopefully, we're aware enough now because 2020 was also a mass awakening event for lots of people to understand all of this coded stuff and all of these secret societies and, Masonic symbolism, all this stuff. A lot of people woke up to it in 2020. So hopefully, they're aware enough now where whenever the next event happens, we're not going to allow it to fully create the New World Order.
Yeah, the next one could be something to do with UFOs or UAPs, as they call them now, because they keep talking about UFOs and UAPs all the time now, and this could be a blue beam operation. They're trying to instill the idea of UFOs, more and more into our minds, but we will not let them do it. We're not going to believe them. I will certainly not believe whatever they're cooking up for us.
Absolutely. All news is fake news. Anything we see on the news, anything we see from the mainstream should be disregarded and be considered fake news. It should be guilty until proven innocent, in my opinion. And
Yeah, well said.
and yeah, I hope everybody stays aware, stays on the lookout, stays vigilant, continues to disobey. Mr. Sylvan Tristan, I appreciate you so much. Make sure everybody checks out his book, Redating Ancient Greece. Still one of my favorite books in history or alternative history, we can call it. Very good. Excited for our next project together.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Appreciate you, sir. Appreciate everybody for joining us. Stay healthy, my friends. Until next time.